Good evening. My name is Joe Sam Robinson, and it's my pleasure to have with us this evening once again the famous Dr. Buck Melton. Welcome, Buck.
I don't know how
I don't know you're
popular, how famous I
am. You're just an abundant source of witticisms and important worldviews. Would you have another one ready to fire at our large audience right now?
Well, I do. If our audience watched our last episode, and I talked about Margaret Atwood at the very end of it, she has a very interesting poem called, and I forget the exact name of the poem, but The Problems of Being a Military Historian. And there is a wonderful line or two in that poem, and I'll probably get it wrong, but I'll paraphrase a bit. Believe me, thousands of soldiers have prayed to God all night and meant it and been slaughtered anyway. It's a very sobering thing that I've meditated on.
Well, that's a profound comment.
Yes.
I'll accept that. It's quite profound. Well, we had at our last get together, we had a rather spirited conversation about J.D. Vance and the vice president choice of former President Trump. And now we could maybe speak about the Democratic side of the street. The vice president has chosen Governor Walz, did I get that right? Yes. Who is the governor of
Minnesota.
I believe,
yes.
And we discussed a little bit about the choices that would the choices that the presidential candidate would make, and what would be the things that would influence it. And so number one would be, can I get along with this person? Maybe number two is can the person be president? Number three, does he share my views? And then number four, is he a good candidate to balance the ticket? So maybe those four things. And I don't know how far we got with J.D. Vance, but we certainly probed a lot of that. Now, to me, the thing that strikes me to start with is I wonder that the Governor Shapiro of Pennsylvania seems to be a really well-spoken, bright person with pretty deep intellect, and he's would seem to be a candidate that would intellectually be superior. I guess I could say that. And the question would be, was the governor of Minnesota picked because that would not ruffle the feathers of candidate Harris. That I can get along. The guy's not going to yell at me or dominate the conversation around the whatever Oval Office. Is that a fair thing to say?
I'm not sure it is, and of course you'd have to ask Vice President Harris about that in particular. But a president is under no constitutional or legal duty that I'm aware of to include the vice president in his, or perhaps in this case, her inner circle. I mean, we talked about Truman being locked out, but the Johnson people were alienated
right.
Under John F. Kennedy. It's still very early days. The announcement was just yesterday, and more is going to come out as the media starts focusing on Walz. But the initial impressions are that Harris chose him, or I don't know if this is why she chose him, but he certainly is, for the Democratic Party, a moderate, a middle of the roader. From what I know, from what I've heard, that and therefore a ticket balancing. And once again, appealing to the middle, I think, is an important thing because that's where the undecideds are. So he's a white male. He is apparently has conventional views. He, like J.D. Vance, is a veteran, which you placed a great deal of emphasis on.
I mean,
so maybe he's the wrong branch of service for you. I don't know.
No, I've been in the National Guard. I know the deal there. I know it well.
So he's not quite in a flyover state. I mean, is Minnesota one of the flyover states? I think
yes, it is.
It may be a bit more blue than
the same way that Georgia's a flyover state.
Oh, Georgia's not a flyover state.
I think people in New York think it is.
Well, people in New York think everything's a flyover state
That's
if it's
just
not
my
New York.
point.
Yes.
That's just my point. Just California and New York. That's it.
Yes, but
That's all the country is.
yes. So, and yet he does seem to be a solid Democrat. So, so I think that this would be a primo example of ticket balancing and appealing to the undecided center, if there is in fact an undecided.
Now let me probe
center.
this a little bit. That's maybe ticket balancing. Is that something that belongs in the 1950s? That concept, because it looks like the way this election is playing itself out. There are only these because we have the Electoral College. We've just these battleground states, whatever the states that have any chance at all of going one way or the other. And so that's allegedly 7 states. Who knows? I mean, it could be more, it could be less, but everything else is nothing. And so at least in the calculus of the presidency. So all the attention is going into these battleground states. And in the battleground states, there is a restricted number of people, whatever that number is, that really is going to determine what's up. So we could say in Georgia, for instance, which is a battleground state, the computers have gone there and they look at this, they look at that, and famously, suburban women, the soccer moms, are the determining factor. I'm not sure they are. And it's also the voter turnout of your hardcore constituency in those states. And I'm sure there's some kind of major assessment going on, and maybe we could discuss Georgia, what the impact of these 2 candidates, each party, would be on the swing voters in Georgia. The swing voters in Georgia. And everything else, I mean, I think you had a lot of objections to J.D. Vance. Okay, I mean, that's reasonable. But I mean, when it comes down to the calculus of this electoral cycle, in Georgia, it appears to me that in the swing voters out there, it could be that if the Democrats put the facts out as you understand them, it would tilt people into the Democratic column, these swing voters. On the other hand, it could a really I don't know, gung-ho guy that touts Semper Fi, the Marines, and that might bring out many candidates. So that could be it. And then looking at the impact of the balance ticket with the former governor of Minnesota, I'm not sure in Georgia, what is that going to do to, point number 1, bring out voters that might not have come out in the Democratic column, and then point number 2, is there a group of people that are going to be persuaded by him they would be reassured, I guess you'd say, that the Democratic Party was not so extreme and it would work. Does that sound reasonable? I mean, it almost is like if you're really going to do it, you'd have these huge computers. You'd have we've identified 118,000 swing voters, and we've done this, we've cracked their codes on their TV, what they watch on something like that.
Well, if it's really just a matter of that, then both sides are doing it. Then it's a question of who's got the better algorithms.
Yes, you've said something
yes.
profound there.
And so and I'm not enough of a pollster and follower of the politics to know this, but are the people who are going to decide this election, are they people who are ideologically in the middle, who have not made up their minds? Are they hardcore ideologues who, for some reason or another, can't be bothered to actually get out and vote? Who is this small group who are going to decide the election? I mean, I was proceeding on the assumption that it's the ideological centrists who are going to vote but who are undecided, and I may be wrong about that.
Well, I think that's part of it. I mean, what I want to say is I'm not sure. If that's the mission of the two parties, how effective that is or is going to be, I don't believe, I could be wrong, that the governor of Minnesota is going to have much of an impact in luring Republican voters into the Democratic camp. I don't think that would be. And there are all these other variables that are going on right now, and maybe one of them is the people that have been chosen. Are they going to raise money for the party? In other words, if people say, well, I've got whatever, I'm a Democratic fundraiser, and I know I can get $500 million if you put this kind of person in, or contrary-wise. There's also in the Democratic Party, there's the allegation of anti-Semitism that's floating around. And so is that a card in the deck here, which is an important issue in the country? I mean, Wood Shapiro, I sort of made somewhat of a case that maybe Shapiro would be a better president. I don't know if one could say that. I was asserting that, well, he certainly seems, at first inspection, more agile with his language, just listening to the way the sentences are put together. So a little bit, maybe. So, and could he understand foreign policy issues in Latin America easier? I don't know. But, so those would be some facts. And what I might get into is, are these choices being made in sort of a cavalier way? It would appear to me that you could really, you could use AI. That's something you don't like, I know. But you could really get a lot of insights into what, if your objective for picking such a person, the same way that you might use that new technology if you were going to bring in, a new assistant professor, or you were going to bring in someone to work in your corporation, and really getting all the variables put there, spelled out, particularly in something so important as this. And were these just casual, back of an envelope decisions made by each side?
Well, to back up from it, first of all, I don't blanket dislike AI. It is that I do not believe it is the panacea that is going to lead us into those broad sunlit uplands.
Okay, good. Yeah, that's reasonable.
Yeah. So, but also a second concern is that it's all statistics, and there's always the individual factor that can be the outlier. And thirdly, yes, I certainly don't think a president or a presidential candidate or nominee is choosing a vice president. I certainly don't think, can I get along with that person is not first on the list, because a president does not have to get along with a vice president. The president can just pigeonhole and sequester that vice president with no problem. I doubt the second factor is, if I die, will this person be a good replacement for
That's
me?
what you'd like to imagine.
Yeah, that should be first on the list, arguably.
Yes.
For me, it just seems a no-brainer. Is this person going to help me win the White House? Or at the very least, is this person not going to decrease my chances of winning the White House? These people are politicians. They are after the gold medal
Yes.
of politics. It just seems to me that is going to be their first question. That may be irresponsible. And to give them the benefit of a doubt, it's maybe I really believe I am best for the country, I can save the country, I can help the country, but I can't do any of this unless I can get elected. So will this vice presidential candidate that I'm picking help me get elected?
I have a question. The story is with pundits that say, why didn't they pick the Pennsylvania governor? That would do it. And he's a really, a really bright person. He could probably put Pennsylvania in the Democratic column, and he could do other things in other places, and he would, his intellectual abilities would be reassuring to a lot of people. A lot of people would be reassured about it, and instead this other choice was made, and it presumably one of the complicated cards in the deck is the tents, the broad tents under which political parties collect their adherents. And the Democratic Party has got really a lot of issues, and supposedly on the left, if you want to say the more extreme left, they were suspicious of this guy's Jewish background. At least, were they not? Were they? I don't know. But at least that idea has been tossed around, and that's not a good start to the conversation, in my opinion.
I would like to think that if that was a factor at all, that it was not anti-Semitism for anti-Semitism's sake, but more of a rational decision based on what is going on in Gaza, between Israel and Gaza right now, without regard to the religions, although of course that is the basis for that conflict. I do think it very interesting that there have been very few serious Jewish or Catholic contenders for the presidency, and of the Catholics that we have seen and who have gotten it, very few of them seem to actually adhere to the basic tenets of the Catholic faith. So,
a big number on the Supreme Court. I'll say that. I mean, that's a lot of Catholics on the Supreme Court.
A split there. So obviously Scalia took it seriously. Amy Coney Barrett apparently takes it seriously. On the other hand, Kennedy, Brennan, did not seem to.
Still,
to do
I mean,
so.
there's
Biden and of course the Kennedy family.
Yes.
So as it was often said in Massachusetts, there are not a lot of Catholic Kennedys, but there are a whole lot of Kennedy Catholics. So, whatever that is.
That's clever. Well, yeah, I'm going to make this point, I think, about the decision that was made. You spoke about all the bad things about J.D. Vance, which have been uncovered. I believe the same things are going to be uncovered. I feel quite confident about
there are certainly going
about
to be.
the Democratic guy in the whole many things.
There's going to be a deep dive, certainly.
And there are going to be facts that, you might say, well, we've got to stop funding the police, or there are too many police around, and I'm always against policemen, or something was said like whatever in the past, and that's going to surface. It's a very interesting state, Minnesota. Very interesting. It has that. What is that? The Farmer Labor Party. Do I get that right?
Yes.
It's an interesting state in that it has this Scandinavian socialism. The tent is there, and it's interesting that it's there, and it's preserved, and it really is quite a liberal state, as opposed to their western neighbors, the Dakotas, that are very conservative. But for whatever reason, it's really a very liberal place. And he has adopted a very liberal policy, which if the idea was to try and reassure middle-of-the-road voters, it might well have been Governor Shapiro might have done a better job in regards to the way he's possibly more balanced, more of a middle-of-the-road administration. So that maybe, and that's going to play itself out. And finally, I'm concerned a little bit about the balance, the idea of the tickets are being balanced. Well, the Democrats balance, the Republicans balance. To me, it just emphasizes I'll use the word extreme nature of their policies. And the reason that I say that is that what happens in America, if you want to castigate your opponent, you just have to say far left, far right, or extreme views. And then that immediately means they're bad. But that seems to be what's happening here. The policies each party is putting out there are not in the middle.
Well, and I do think in a democratic Republican system like we have, that you do have a bell curve, and most people are more or less in the middle, and that means that's more or less where they want the country to be.
Yes,
and,
yes indeed.
And that does mean extremism is bad. Now, of course, you can go with the Goldwater, extremism in the defense of liberty is no vice. I probably got that a bit wrong, but you have to do what the mass of people want. Now. And there is, once again, if you look at the parties, they do have that ameliorating, or they're supposed to have, they have in the past had this ameliorating influence that the extreme views don't make the headway. But somehow, through a weird combination of media attention and dissatisfaction and the slipping economy and our slipping place in the world, it's when you get economic upset, when you get social upset, in the Burkean sense. If somebody's basic ideology is messed with, their basic means of making a living, their ability to make a living get messed with, they do start gravitating towards more extreme views, and that is a very sick sign. And so the fact that the extremists do seem to be in control of the parties and that they are getting this much airtime is a sign that America is not in good shape.
Well, I mean, I think that's exactly right. And one of the things that concerns me is the rhetoric each party is producing. So you could say the Democratic Party, this, is a bullseye on Trump. This guy is like Adolf Hitler Jr. He's going to put people in concentration camps. The gas chambers are rolling. He's going to all these awful, awful things and it would be reasonable to assassinate him, or if that can't, that would be the best thing. But failing that, he should be put in prison, and we're going to find a way to put him in prison. I mean, he's obviously needs to be there, and all his allies should be in prison with him, and anything to do that, because he's such a terrible, wicked person, and his followers are such terrible, wicked people. They're part of the basket of deplorables, if I could say that. But we're going to do all that. That's half the country. That's more or less half the country. And then on the other side, the idea is that the swamp, all the wickedness of the Democratic Party, they're destroying the country. And Trump has said, well, the country won't be here. This is it. After the Democrats win this election, that's your country is gone. It won't be here, and they're going to do something bad to you. So the idea is this is something that concerns me, is playing the fear card. So if you look at wickedness and evil and how that happens, if you frighten people, you can really get them to do almost anything, and that's what politicians do, and they're good at it. I'm going to frighten you. Maybe it's not such a big deal. I don't know, whatever. The Democrats take over the Georgia legislature. I mean, it's not, I guess we can handle that. But, if they do that, it's going to be something terrible. Or, I hope you didn't sleep well last night. Or the Republicans, the same thing. They're experts at this. And, just to continue with this, the ability of the media to influence the emotional tranquility of the listeners, of the people, of the American people, to really stir them up and cause some really bad things. They're experts at it. They're really good at it. And the politicians do that. They say, how can we, for instance, the big thing, how can we get our voters to the polls? What are we going to do to get them there? Well, they're going to be, kind of sleeping late. Maybe they drank some beer and watched a football game or whatever, or they walk the dog. They've got to walk their dog, and I'm not going to get to the polls, or I don't like paperwork. But if you say to them, this is it, somebody's going to come in here and do something terrible to you and so they use this fear card to motivate the voter turnout. And I'm not sure how much that problem has been addressed. I'd say that.
Well, it makes me think of the wonderful line, and I think I've said this recently on this show, that when the founding fathers came out of the convention and a woman said to Benjamin Franklin, well, Dr. Franklin, what have we got, a republic or a monarchy? And he said, a republic if you can keep it. And we're doing a really lousy job of keeping it these last 10 or 20 or 30 years. Yeats's Second Coming poem, the sinner does not hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world.
So slouches toward
Bethlehem waiting to be born.
Slouching there.
That and this is something you were getting at the end of our last episode, the idea of the virtuous society, the nuclear family, that if you cannot govern your own passions and act in a reasonable way, then our elected officials are not going to be able to do that either. Once again, I think it's a combination of media and the fact that socially and economically there are a lot of upheavals going on that have made the extremes more attractive.
Which brings up, I think this is an important word to look into, and that's democracy. Looking, what does that exactly mean? And is our system a democratic system now? Was it more or less democratic 30 or 40 years ago? Is there anything that, what does the word mean exactly? Can you have a democracy, as we understand it, with 350 million people, all these diverse ideas, and the skill of manipulating the voters? And so that the actual issues, the understanding the voters have about what they're actually up to might be really suspect. Not to make too much of a deal. Okay, I'm going to vote for Adolf Hitler, says a person, because whatever, I don't know. I like listening to military bands or whatever, and not understanding exactly what's going on, and the facts of the situation were not clearly presented, and if they were, it might well be that people ignored them. And I think this is an important issue. The assumption is that if you employ the word democracy, whatever the word means, that's something sacrosanct. And just to say the word means all discussion ends, all reformation ends, all mistakes are swept under the rug. And I think that just what we're facing now, in the way the system is working itself out, it's worthy of a discussion.
Well, I think it is. We've got to start wrapping up at this point. I would say that I'm not as enamored with the word democracy as you are. And I do think it's interesting, when I'm watching congressional debates and such, that the Democrats tend to use the word democracy more. That we are not a pure democracy. We are a constitutional republic with democratic principles. Now, that's a mouthful, but democracy means that 50% plus one can do anything it wants, can be a tyrant. But that would take us into philosophy. We have to save that for another.
And I'll say this.
To another episode.
The idea is, whatever the country is it a constitutional republic, or is it turning into a social democratic state, a socialist democratic state, like many Western European countries? It appears to me that's the ambition on the left. I mean, it's not terrible for that to want that, but it's not clearly demarcated, I think.
Well, that's for another episode.
Yes.
So we'll have to look into that.
Right. Good. Okay. Welcome once again.
Indeed. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.